Alexander Herzen, a prominent Russian writer, thinker, and revolutionary, was born in 1812 in Moscow to a wealthy aristocratic family. Growing up in an era marked by the oppressive reign of Tsar Nicholas I, Herzen was exposed early to the injustices of Russian society, including the stark divide between the privileged and the suffering serfs. As a young man, Herzen was deeply influenced by the liberal ideals of the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, fueling his desire to see a free and equitable Russia. In his university years, Herzen connected with like-minded young intellectuals, developing radical ideas about social justice and political reform. His outspoken views on Russia's autocratic regime led to his first arrest in the 1830s. As punishment, Herzen was exiled to the Russian provinces, a harsh sentence that separated him from the intellectual circles in Moscow and St. Petersburg. However, his writings continued to circulate, spreading his ideas about freedom, equality, and the need for reform. Despite constant surveillance, Herzen's influence grew, and he continued to challenge the Tsarist authorities. In 1835, he was arrested again, this time sent to the remote town of Vyatka, and later to Vladimir. The government's attempts to silence him only deepened his resentment of the regime. Herzen witnessed the exploitation of serfs, the cruelty of the Russian penal system, and the complacency of the ruling class, experiences that solidified his revolutionary convictions. In the 1840s, Herzen's life took a dramatic turn. Facing increased pressure and fearing for his family's safety, he sought to escape Russia altogether. In 1847, he managed to leave for Western Europe, where he would spend the rest of his life in self-imposed exile. Settling in Paris, then later in London, he used his newfound freedom to amplify his voice against the Russian monarchy. Abroad, Herzen became one of Russia's most influential political thinkers. He published articles and pamphlets calling for social change, an end to serfdom, and a more democratic society. In 1853, he established the Free Russian Press in London, where he published Kolokol, The Bell, the first Russian-language newspaper not controlled by the state. Kolokol became a sensation, reaching Russian intellectuals, radicals, and even government officials. It exposed government abuses, championed reform, and advocated for freedom of speech, all while cleverly evading censorship by being published outside Russian borders. Herzen's ideas inspired many, especially the young Russian radicals, who admired his courage in challenging the autocracy. He called for a unique path for Russian socialism, distinct from Western Europe, focusing on the communal traditions of the Russian peasantry. He envisioned a society where power belonged to the people rather than a single ruler, an ideal that resonated widely among revolutionaries. In his later years, Herzen became critical of certain radical groups that embraced violence and authoritarian tactics. Although he strongly opposed the Tsarist regime, he feared that unbridled radicalism would only replace one form of oppression with another. He warned of the dangers of a centralized and dictatorial government, believing true freedom could only come through gradual change and a just society. Herzen's influence on Russian political thought persisted long after his death in 1870. His writings inspired a generation of reformers and revolutionaries, including figures who would shape Russia's future. While he did not live to see the downfall of the Tsarist regime, Herzen is remembered as a pioneering figure in Russia's long struggle for freedom and social justice. His commitment to human rights, justice, and a vision for a better Russia secured his legacy as one of Russia's greatest revolutionary minds.